Her coworkers set her up on a blind date as a joke. The overweight single mom waitress almost walked out when she realized her date was a mafia boss. What she didn't know, 8 years ago, she'd saved his sister's life. And he'd been searching for her ever since. Maria's hands trembled as she poured coffee into Mr. Henderson's cup for the third time that morning. The elderly regular smiled kindly, but she could feel the weight of every eye in the diner on her back. Her coworkers were huddled by the kitchen window, whispering and giggling like teenagers plotting something terrible. "Girl, you need to sit down," her best friend Keisha called out, waving a folded piece of paper in the air like a victory flag. "We got news." Maria wiped her hands on her grease-stained apron and approached the group with caution. In her 4 years working at Sunrise Diner, she'd learned that when Keisha had that particular gleam in her eye, trouble was brewing. "What now?" Maria asked, exhaustion making her voice flat. Keisha slapped the paper down on the counter with dramatic flair. It was a reservation confirmation for Luxor, the most expensive Italian restaurant in the city. The kind of place Maria had only seen in magazines her daughter Emma cut up for school projects. "We set you up on a blind date," Keisha announced. "Tonight. 8 o'clock. Maria's stomach dropped. "You did what?" "Don't give us that look," Tanya chimed in, the youngest waitress whose optimism Maria usually found endearing. Today, it felt like a knife. "When's the last time you did something for yourself? You work doubles, you take care of Emma. You never go anywhere." "Because I'm a mother," Maria shot back, her cheeks burning. "And blind dates? Really? Did you see me this morning? I can barely fit into my uniform." The words came out harsher than she intended, but they were true. Since Emma's father Kyle had walked out 3 years ago, Maria had gained 70 pounds. Stress eating, the doctor called it. Depression, her therapist suggested. Survival, Maria thought privately. "Stop it," Keisha said firmly, her dark eyes serious now. "You're beautiful, Maria. And you deserve one night where someone treats you right. Just 1 inch." Maria picked up the reservation paper. Luxor Restaurant. Table for 2. 8 o'clock. The date was labeled under a name she didn't recognize. M. Santos. "Who is this person?" she asked quietly. Keisha and Tanya exchanged a look that made Maria's suspicion flare. "It's anonymous," Tanya said. "One of those charity date things. Very upscale. The guy doesn't know what you look like either, so it's fair." "Charity." Maria's voice cracked. "You sign me up for a charity date? Like I'm some kind of project." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Maria threw the paper back on the counter. "You think I need pity? You think I can't get a date on my own, so you have to auction me off to some rich guy who probably does this to feel good about himself." The diner went quiet. Even the clatter of dishes in the kitchen seemed to pause. Maria realized she was breathing hard, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to shed in front of everyone. "We just want you to be happy," Keisha said softly. Maria grabbed her purse from under the counter. "My shift ends at 3. I'm taking Emma to the park. That makes me happy." She pushed through the diner door, the bell chiming mockingly behind her. But at 7:30 that evening, Maria stood in front of her bathroom mirror, wearing the one dress that still fit, a navy blue number she'd bought for a cousin's wedding 2 years ago. It pulled tight across her hips, and her arms looked massive in the short sleeves, but it was this or nothing. Emma sat on the edge of the bathtub, swinging her legs and watching her mother with those sharp 6-year-old eyes that saw everything. "You look pretty, Mama," Emma said. "I look ridiculous," Maria muttered, trying to tame her hair into something presentable. "Why are you going if you don't want to?" Maria paused, meeting her daughter's gaze in the mirror. Why was she going?
Prida?
Curiosity? Or maybe, buried under all the exhaustion and self-loathing, a tiny spark of hope that Keisha was right, that she deserved something good. "Because sometimes grown-ups do things that scare them," Maria said finally. "To prove they're braver than they think." Emma nodded solemnly. "Like when I went down the big slide." Exactly like that. Mrs. Chun from apartment 3B had agreed to watch Emma for the evening. As Maria kissed her daughter goodbye, Emma grabbed her hand tight. If he's mean, you can leave, Emma whispered. That's what you always tell me. Maria's heart broke and mended simultaneously. I will, baby. I promise. The taxi dropped her outside Luxor at exactly 8 o'clock. The restaurant glowed like a jewel box, all amber lighting and floor-to-ceiling windows. Beautiful people in beautiful clothes drifted in and out like they belonged to a different species. Maria paid the driver with shaking hands and stepped onto the sidewalk. Every instinct screamed at her to run. She could feel the doorman's eyes on her, assessing, judging. Her dress suddenly felt cheaper, her shoes more scuffed, her body more impossible to ignore. But then she thought of Emma's words. If he's mean, you can leave. Maria lifted her chin and walked toward the entrance. The doorman opened the door without a word, and Maria stepped inside. The hostess, a willowy blonde who looked like she survived on air and compliments, glanced at her reservation paper. Ms. Santos, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your table is ready. Right this way. Maria followed her through the restaurant, painfully aware of the heads turning, the whispers. The hostess led her to a private corner table, half hidden behind a silk screen. Your date will arrive shortly, the hostess said, then vanished. Maria sat down carefully, the chair creaking slightly under her weight. She stared at the menu without seeing it, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. This was a mistake. This was all a terrible mistake. She was reaching for her purse to leave when a man's voice spoke behind her. I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic was hell. Maria looked up, and everything changed. The man standing before her was not what Maria expected. Alessandro De Luca was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in old Italian paintings, sharp jaw, Roman nose, eyes so dark they were almost black. His suit probably cost more than Maria's monthly rent. Everything about him screamed power, wealth, danger. But his hands were shaking. May I? He asked, gesturing to the chair across from her. Maria nodded, unable to form words. This had to be a mistake. Men who looked like Alessandro De Luca didn't go on blind dates with women who looked like her. They certainly didn't look nervous about it. He sat down with careful precision, like he was defusing a bomb rather than joining someone for dinner. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched uncomfortably until a waiter appeared, breaking the tension. Water for the table, Alessandro said quickly. And give us a few minutes, please. The waiter disappeared. Alessandro's fingers drummed once against the tablecloth before he caught himself and stopped. I should be honest, he said finally. I don't usually do this. Blind dates? Maria asked, finding her voice. Any dates, he gave a small, self-deprecating smile. My life doesn't really allow for it. Maria studied him carefully. There was something familiar about his face, like she'd seen it before, but couldn't place where. What do you do? Family business, he said vaguely. Import, export. Very boring. It was clearly a lie, but Maria didn't push. She had her own secrets. What about you? Alessandro asked, and something in his tone made her believe he actually wanted to know. I'm a waitress, Maria said, lifting her chin. Single mom. I work at Sunrise Diner on 4th Street. Not glamorous, but it's honest work. Honest work is the only kind that matters, Alessandro said quietly. His eyes held hers with unexpected intensity. How old is your child? 6. Her name's Emma. Maria felt herself relaxing slightly. She's the only good thing I've ever done. Alessandro's expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. I'm sure that's not true. You don't know me. No, he agreed. But I'd like to. The waiter returned, and they ordered. Maria chose the cheapest pasta on the menu despite Alessandro's gentle insistence that she get whatever she wanted. As they ate, the conversation flowed easier than Maria thought possible. Alessandro asked about Emma, about the diner, about Maria's life with genuine curiosity. He didn't talk much about himself, but what he did share painted a picture of a man trapped by obligations he never chose. "My father died 6 months ago," Alessandro said as they shared tiramisu. "Everything changed after that. Responsibilities I never wanted, expectations I can't escape." "I'm sorry," Maria said softly. "Losing a parent is hard." "We weren't close," Alessandro admitted. "But his death meant I had to step into his role." And that role, he trailed off, seeming to catch himself. "It's complicated." Maria set down her fork, suddenly serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really agree to this date? A man like you doesn't need a blind date setup." Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because someone told me I needed to remember what it feels like to be human. To sit across from someone without agendas or fear or violence hanging over every word." Violence. The word hung in the air like smoke. "Who are you?" Maria asked, her survival instincts finally kicking in. Before Alessandro could answer, Maria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and saw a text from Keisha. "Girl, check the news. Your date is Alessandro De Luca, the Mafia guy whose dad just died. Get out." Maria's blood turned to ice. She looked up at Alessandro, who had gone very still. "You saw something," he said. Not a question. Maria stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need to go." "Please." Alessandro stood too, his hand reaching out but not touching her. "Let me explain." "You're Mafia," Maria whispered. "Your family runs half the crime in this city. I saw your father's funeral on the news. 50 black cars, politicians in attendance, the whole thing." "I never lied to you," Alessandro said desperately. "I said family business. I said it was complicated. You let me sit here, talking about my daughter, not knowing I was having dinner with a criminal." "I'm not." Alessandro stopped himself. His jaw clenched. "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Maria grabbed her purse. This was a mistake. She turned to leave, but Alessandro's voice stopped her. 8 years ago, Harbor Street. Late afternoon, there was a fight between two groups. A girl got caught in the middle, 16 years old, terrified. A woman pulled her into a doorway, shielded her with her own body until it was over. Maria froze. "That girl was my little sister, Lucia," Alessandro continued, his voice breaking. "And I've been looking for the woman who saved her ever since." Maria turned slowly. Alessandro's eyes were filled with something that looked like desperate hope. "The woman had a tattoo," he said. "Small birds on her left wrist." Without thinking, Maria looked down at her own wrist, where 3 small birds had been inked years ago. Alessandro saw them and released a shaking breath. "It was you," he whispered. "All this time it was you." Maria's legs gave out. She sank back into her chair, staring at Alessandro like he was a ghost. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The doorway on Harbor Street, next to the old pharmacy," Alessandro said, moving closer but still maintaining distance, like approaching a frightened animal. "You were wearing a red jacket. My sister said you kept telling her to stay down, stay quiet. When it was over, you disappeared before she could thank you." The memory crashed over Maria like a wave. She'd been 24, working 2 jobs, trying to save money for nursing school, a dream she'd abandoned years ago. She'd taken a shortcut through Harbor Street when the violence erupted. Gunshots, shouting, grown men acting like animals. And in the middle of it all, a teenage girl with terror in her eyes. Maria had acted on instinct, pulling the girl into the shallow doorway, covering her smaller body with her own. She remembered the girl's fingernails digging into her arm, remembered praying neither of them would die. "She had a silver bracelet," Maria said softly, "with a butterfly charm. She kept twisting it the whole time, around and around." Alessandro's eyes filled with tears he didn't shed. He sat down heavily, like the weight of 8 years had suddenly become too much. "Lucia still wears that bracelet," he said. "Every single day. She tells the story of the woman who saved her to anyone who'll listen. My father spent thousands trying to find you, private investigators, surveillance footage, everything. But you'd vanished. I moved to a different neighborhood 2 weeks later, Maria said, still trying to process this impossible connection. The area was getting too dangerous, and I was scared. I didn't want to be a witness to anything. I just wanted to forget. But you saved her, Alessandra's voice was raw. You didn't know who she was, what family she came from. You just saw a scared girl and protected her. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How most people would have run? Maria shook her head. I'm not special. I'm just. You are, Alessandro interrupted. Lucia had nightmares for months. The only thing that helped was remembering the woman with the bird tattoo, who told her she was safe. You became her hero. The waiter approached tentatively, but Alessandro waved him away without looking. Why didn't she recognize me? Maria asked. If this is real, if I'm really the person you've been looking for, why didn't Lucia identify me from photos or something? She only saw you for maybe 90 seconds, and most of that time your face was turned away, watching the street, Alessandro explained. All she remembered clearly was the tattoo, the red jacket, and your voice telling her everything would be okay. But we never stopped looking. And then tonight. Tonight was supposed to be a joke, Maria said bitterly. My coworkers setting up the fat girl on a pity date. I bet they're laughing right now. This wasn't a setup, Alessandro said firmly. At least not the kind you think. I've been attending these charity dinner events for months, hoping to meet people outside my world. Tonight, I chose the reservation that said Waitress, single mother, 4th Street, something about it felt right. Maria laughed, but it came out broken. Felt right? You chose me because I sounded desperate. I chose you because you sounded real, Alessandro corrected. Everyone else's profiles were full of accomplishments and glamour. Yours just said you worked hard and loved your daughter. In my world, that's rarer than diamonds. They sat in silence, the weight of coincidence, or fate, settling between them. I don't know what you expect from me, Maria said finally. I'm glad your sister was okay.
I'm glad I helped.
But that doesn't change what you are, what your family does. I know, Alessandro's jaw tightened. And I wouldn't ask you to be involved in any of it. But please, let me repay the debt. Lucia would want to meet you, to thank you properly. I don't want money. I'm not offering money, Alessandro said. I'm offering gratitude, protection, whatever you need to make your life easier. You gave my sister her life back. Let me give you something in return. Maria thought of Emma, of the bills piling up on her kitchen counter, of the landlord's threat to raise rent. She thought of her daughter's worn shoes and the way Maria had been rationing groceries to make it to payday. But she also thought of the news reports, the whispers about the DeLuca family, the violence that followed them like a shadow. I need to go home, Maria said, standing again. This is too much. I need to think. Alessandro stood as well, pulling a card from his jacket pocket. My private number.
Please, just call me if you need anything.
Or if you change your mind about meeting Lucia. Maria took the card with trembling fingers. Their hands brushed, and she felt the calluses on his palms. Unexpected on someone so wealthy. Fighters' hands, she realized. Hands that had done terrible things, probably. But also hands that had just trembled with genuine emotion. Thank you for dinner, Maria said formally. And I'm glad your sister is okay. She left before he could respond, walking quickly through the restaurant without looking back. But she slipped his card into her purse instead of throwing it away. Outside, the night air felt like a slap. Maria stood on the sidewalk, trying to catch her breath, trying to understand how her life had just tilted sideways. Behind her, through the restaurant window, she could see Alessandro still standing by their table, watching her leave with an expression of such profound loss that it made her chest ache. Maria's shift at Sunrise Diner the next afternoon felt like moving through molasses. Every customer's order blurred together. Every smile she forced felt like cracking glass. She'd barely slept, Alessandro's card burning a hole in her purse like a live coal. Keisha kept shooting her worried looks from across the diner. So, Keisha finally cornered her by the coffee station. How was it? You never called me back. It was fine, Maria said flatly, refilling the coffee pot.
Fiend?
Girl, you went on a date with Alessandro De Luca, and all you have to say is fine? How did you even know who he was? Maria asked sharply. You said it was anonymous. Keisha had the decency to look guilty. I may have done some research after we set it up. When I saw who'd chosen your profile, I panicked. That's why I texted you. A little late for warnings, Maria muttered. Did he hurt you? Threaten you? Keisha's voice rose with genuine concern. No, Maria softened slightly.
He was
a gentleman. But it doesn't matter. I'm not seeing him again. The conversation ended when a family of 5 walked in, demanding Maria's attention. But as she took their order, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Expensive, tinted windows, engine running. It had been there when her shift started 2 hours ago. Probably nothing, she told herself. But the hairs on the back of her neck stood up anyway. At 4 o'clock, as Maria wiped down tables before the dinner rush, she overheard Tanya gossiping with a customer at the counter. I'm just saying it's weird, Tanya said. That car's been there all day. My boyfriend thinks it's surveillance. Surveillance for what? The customer asked. Who knows? Maybe the cops are watching someone in the neighborhood. Maria's hands stilled on the table. She glanced out the window again. The sedan hadn't moved. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Don't be alarmed. The car outside is mine. There were 2 men asking about you at the restaurant this morning. I'm making sure you're safe. Maria's heart slammed against her ribs. She grabbed her purse and stepped outside, marching directly to the black sedan. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a thick-necked man in his 40s with a scar across his eyebrow. Ma'am, please go back inside, he said calmly. Where's Alessandro? Maria demanded. Ensuring your safety. I don't need. The back door of the sedan opened, and Alessandro stepped out. He looked different in daylight, still dangerously handsome, but tired. Like he hadn't slept either. Maria, he said quietly. Please, let's talk inside your diner. Not out here. Something in his tone made her comply. They took a booth in the back corner, the one nobody liked because it was too close to the kitchen. Keisha brought coffee without being asked, her eyes wide as saucers. Explain, Maria said once they were alone.
now.
Alessandro leaned forward, his voice low. This morning, 2 men came to Luxor asking questions about the woman I had dinner with last night. They wanted your name, your address. The hostess refused to give information, but they were persistent. Who were they? I don't know yet, Alessandro admitted. But in my world, when people start asking questions, it's never innocent. Someone saw us together. Someone is curious about who you are to me. I'm nothing to you, Maria said. We had one dinner. You saved my sister's life, Alessandro said intensely. In my world, that makes you family. And I protect family. I didn't ask for protection. No, Alessandro agreed.
But you need it anyway.
These men weren't curious neighbors, Maria. They were professionals. And they know where you work. Fear clawed at Maria's throat. What about Emma? My daughter. I have someone watching her school, Alessandro said quickly. Discreetly. She's safe. I swear to you she's safe. Maria wanted to be angry, to accuse him of overstepping. But underneath the violation of privacy was relief. If Alessandro was right, if Emma was in danger, at least someone was watching. Why would anyone care about me? Maria asked.
I'm nobody.
Because I care about you, Alessandro said simply. And people who want to hurt me will use that. It's how this world works. Then uncomplicate it, Maria said desperately. Tell people I mean nothing to you. Tell them it was one meaningless dinner. Alessandro's jaw clenched. I can't do that. Why not? Because it would be a lie. His dark eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. And because lying would put you in more danger. If they think you're unimportant, they might hurt you just to send me a message. If they know you're protected, they'll think twice. Maria pressed her hands to her face, trying to think. Her peaceful life, difficult as it was, had just been invaded by forces she didn't understand. And all because she'd pulled a scared girl into a doorway 8 years ago. "What do I do?" she asked finally. "Let me keep you safe," Alessandro said. "Just for a few days, until I figure out who's asking questions and shut it down. You go about your normal life. You won't even know my people are there." "I knew about the car. Because I told you," Alessandro said with a slight smile. "My men are better than that." Maria looked around the diner, at Keisha pretending not to watch, at the regular customers who knew her by name, at the life she'd built from nothing. Small and imperfect, but hers. 48 hours, she said. "You have 48 hours to fix this. Then I want your people gone, and my life back."
Alessandro nodded.
48 hours. As he stood to leave, Maria grabbed his wrist. "If anything happens to my daughter—" "Nothing will," Alessandro promised, and the cold certainty in his voice reminded her exactly who he was. "I stake my life on it." He left cash on the table for coffee he hadn't touched and walked out. Through the window, Maria watched him speak briefly to the scarred man before the sedan pulled away. But she noticed another car down the block, dark blue and nondescript, that started its engine moments later. Alessandro's protection wasn't the only thing following her now. The 48 hours passed in a blur of paranoia and false calm. Maria saw Alessandro's protection everywhere. A man reading a newspaper outside Emma's school, a woman jogging the same route Maria walked home, the same 3 cars rotating through her neighborhood. They were good, but once she knew what to look for, she couldn't unsee them. Emma sensed something was wrong. 6-year-olds always did. "Mama, why do you keep looking out the window?" she asked on the second night, her small face creased with worry. "Just checking the weather, baby," Maria lied, hating herself for it. But the 48 hours ended without incident. No more mysterious men asking questions.
No threats.
Nothing. Maria almost convinced herself Alessandro had been overreacting, that she could go back to her regular life. Then came the late shift. Her manager Danny had called in sick, leaving Maria to close the diner alone on a Thursday night. Usually she'd refuse. It meant leaving Emma with Mrs. Chun until nearly midnight, but Danny had covered for her twice last month when Emma had the flu. Fair was fair. The diner emptied out by 11. Maria counted the register, wiped down tables, and locked up by 11:30. Mrs. Chun had texted that Emma had fallen asleep on her couch, so Maria could pick her up on the way home. The street was quiet. Too quiet. The usual traffic sounds seemed muted, like the city was holding its breath. Maria walked quickly, her keys laced between her fingers the way her mother had taught her. 3 blocks to Mrs. Chen's apartment, then 2 more blocks home. She'd walked this route hundreds of times. She made it to Mrs. Chen's building without incident. The elderly woman answered the door in her bathrobe, Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Such an angel," Mrs. Chen whispered. Never made a sound. Maria took her daughter carefully, Emma's weight familiar and precious. She thanked Mrs. Chun and headed back outside. The street lights flickered. 1, 2, 3, then steady again.
Maria's instinct screamed danger.
She shifted Emma higher on her hip and walked faster. 1 block from home. Just 1 more block. 2 men stepped out from the alley ahead of her. They were big, professional-looking. The kind of men who got paid to hurt people. One wore a leather jacket despite the warm night. The other had a tattoo creeping up his neck. A snake, she thought, but couldn't be sure in the dim light.
Maria Santos.
Leather jacket asked conversationally. Maria stopped walking. Emma stirred against her shoulder, but didn't wake. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Maria said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Nah, we got the right person," Snake Tattoo said. "We just want to talk. About your boyfriend." "I don't have a boyfriend." Alessandro de Luca might disagree, Leather Jacket said. "See, we saw you two at Luxor. Looked pretty cozy. And we're wondering if you know what kind of man you're mixing with." "I'm not mixing with anyone," Maria said. "It was one dinner. Now please, let me pass. My daughter is sleeping." The men exchanged a glance. Snake Tattoo smiled, and it was the most frightening thing Maria had ever seen. "Here's the thing," he said. "We need you to stop seeing Alessandro. Stop talking to him. Stop existing in his world. Because if you don't," well, he looked pointedly at Emma. "Kids need their mothers, you know?" Ice flooded Maria's veins. "You're threatening my daughter?" "We're giving advice," Leather Jacket corrected. "Friendly advice. Stay away from DeLuca. For your own safety. And if I don't, then accidents happen," Snake Tattoo said. "Cars run red lights. Gas leaks happen in old buildings. Kids get lost on their way home from school." Maria's vision tunneled. Every protective instinct she possessed roared to life. She was calculating distances, exit routes, whether she could run. "Step away from her." The voice came from behind the men, cold and lethal. Alessandro emerged from the shadows like something out of a nightmare, and for the first time, Maria saw the man the newspapers wrote about. This wasn't the nervous dinner companion, or the grateful brother. This was the Mafia boss. 2 more men materialized beside him, including the scarred driver from the sedan. Leather Jacket and Snake Tattoo turned, hands moving toward their waistbands. "I wouldn't," Alessandro said softly. "You're outnumbered, outgunned, and you just threatened a child. The only reason you're still breathing is because that child is sleeping 10 feet away." "DeLuca," Leather Jacket said, trying for bravado. "We're just delivering a message from—" "I know who sent you," Alessandro interrupted. "And you can tell Vincent Russo that if he ever sends men near Maria or her daughter again, there won't be a conversation. There will only be consequences." The scarred man stepped forward, and something in his expression made both men flinch. "Go," Alessandro said.
Now.
They went, disappearing into the night like rats into sewers. Alessandro approached Maria carefully, his hands visible and empty. "Are you hurt?" Maria shook her head, unable to speak. Emma was stirring now, waking from all the tension crackling in the air.
"Nana."
Emma mumbled sleepily. "I'm here, baby," Maria whispered. "Everything's okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. "I need to get you home," Alessandro said. "My car is around the corner." "Your 48 hours are up," Maria said, her voice shaking. "You said you'd fix this." "I'm trying," Alessandro said, and for the first time, she heard fear in his voice. "But this is bigger than I thought. Vincent Russo is a rival family boss. If he's making moves against you, it means he thinks you're leverage. It means being near you is going to get my daughter killed," Maria finished. Alessandro flinched, like she'd struck him. Yes. Emma was fully awake now, staring at Alessandro with wide eyes. Then, inexplicably, she reached out toward him. "You're the man from Mama's phone," Emma said. "Are you her friend?" Alessandro's hard expression cracked. "I'm trying to be." "Then why is Mama scared?" "Because I made a mistake," Alessandro said, looking at Maria. "And I'm trying to fix it." Maria closed her eyes. "We need to talk. But not here." "My car."
"No, Maria interrupted."
"My apartment. I'm not going anywhere else tonight." Alessandro nodded and gestured to his men. They formed a loose perimeter as Maria carried Emma the final block home, Alessandro walking beside her in silence. And Maria realized with growing horror that her simple life was over. The moment she'd pulled Lucia DeLuca into that doorway 8 years ago, she'd set this all in motion. Fate had just been slow to collect its debt. Maria's apartment looked smaller with Alessandro in it. He stood by the window in her tiny living room, looking out at the street while his men took positions outside. Everything about him seemed too large, too dangerous, too real for her world of second-hand furniture and crayon drawings taped to the walls. Emma had fallen back asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the disruption. Maria tucked her in, kissing her forehead and whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep about everything being okay. When she returned to the living room, Alessandro had moved to the small kitchen table. He looked out of place among the breakfast dishes Maria hadn't had time to wash, the stack of bills marked overdue, The children's menu from the diner Emma had colored that morning. Coffee? Maria asked, because she didn't know what else to say. Please. She made it in silence, her hands steadier now. Shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, practical fury. She set a mug in front of Alessandro and sat across from him. Tell me everything, she said. No half-truths. No protecting me from information. If my daughter is in danger, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Alessandro wrapped his hands around the mug, but didn't drink. My father ran the De Luca organization for 30 years. When he died, I inherited everything, the legitimate businesses, the illegal operations, the alliances, and the enemies. What kind of illegal operations? Gambling, loan sharking, protection rackets, Alessandro said without flinching. Nothing that makes me proud. I've been trying to transition everything legitimate, but that takes time. And it makes enemies of people who profit from the old ways. Like Vincent Russo. Russo runs the dock unions and most of the drug trade in the Southern District, Alessandro explained. He wanted to expand into our territory. My father refused. I've refused. So now Russo is looking for weaknesses, pressure points. Ways to force me to negotiate. And I'm a pressure point, Maria said flatly. The men tonight were testing my response. Seeing how much I'd risk for you. Alessandro finally met her eyes. And I showed them everything. I revealed that you matter to me, which makes you valuable to them. Why? Maria demanded. Why do I matter to you? Because I saved your sister 8 years ago? That debt is paid, Alessandro. You've protected me. We're even. Walk away. I can't. Why not? Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because for 8 years, I've been looking for the woman who proved that good people still exist. The woman who risked her life for a stranger because it was the right thing to do. And when I found you, when I sat across from you at that restaurant, I realized you weren't just the person who saved my sister. You were proof that I could become someone different. Someone better. That's not fair, Maria whispered. You can't put that on me. I know, Alessandro's jaw clenched. But it's the truth. And now Russo knows it too. He saw us together. He's done his research. He knows about Emma, about where you work, about every vulnerable point in your life. And he'll use all of it if I don't handle this correctly. Maria stood abruptly, pacing her small kitchen. So what do we do? I can't quit my job. I can't afford to move. I can't just disappear. There's a safe house, Alessandro said carefully. Isolated, protected. You and Emma could stay there while I deal with Russo. A week, maybe 2 inch. Absolutely not. Maria. I have a life, Alessandro. Emma has school. I have bills to pay. I can't just vanish into some mafia safe house while you deal with a rival crime boss. Do you even hear yourself? A sound came from the doorway. Both of them turned to find Emma standing there in her princess pajamas, rubbing her eyes.
Mama?
Why are you yelling? Maria's anger deflated instantly. She crossed to her daughter, kneeling down to her level. I'm sorry, baby. Did we wake you? I had a bad dream, Emma said, then looked past Maria to Alessandro. Is that man making you scared?
No, sweetheart.
He's trying to help. Emma studied Alessandro with that uncanny way children had of seeing through facades. Then, inexplicably, she walked past Maria and took Alessandro's hand. You look sad, Emma said simply. My mama says when people are sad, they need hugs. Alessandro stared at the small hand in his like it was a live grenade. His expression cracked, revealing something vulnerable and broken underneath all that careful control. Your mama is very wise, he said quietly. Emma climbed into the chair next to him, still holding his hand. Are the bad men going to hurt my mama? No, Alessandro said with absolute certainty. I promise you, no one is going to hurt your mama. Do you super promise? Alessandro's lips curved into the smallest smile. I super promise. Okay, Emma said, satisfied. Then she yawned. Mama, can you stay? I don't want you to be alone if you're scared. Emma, that's not. Maria started. Please. Emma's eyes were already drooping. He seems nice. And big. Big people can keep away bad guys. Maria looked at Alessandro helplessly. He shook his head slightly, but Emma was already leaning against his arm, fighting sleep. Just for tonight, Maria heard herself say. You can sleep on the couch. But tomorrow, we figure out a real solution. One that doesn't involve me running and hiding. Agreed, Alessandro said. Maria carried Emma back to bed, and when she returned, Alessandro was removing his jacket. Underneath, she could see a holster with a gun, and it sent a chill through her.
This was her life now.
Guns in her kitchen, bodyguards outside, a mafia boss sleeping on her couch. Alessandro, she said quietly. Those men tonight. What did they mean when they said accidents happen? He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much darkness. They meant exactly what you think they meant. Then why didn't you kill them? Because you were holding your daughter, Alessandro said simply. And I didn't want her to see what I become when someone threatens the people I care about. Maria shivered, but not entirely from fear. From understanding. Alessandro De Luca was a dangerous man. But right now, that danger was pointed away from her. And God help her, she was grateful for it. Maria woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Emma's laughter. For one disoriented moment, she thought she'd dreamed everything. The threats, Alessandro, all of it. Then she stumbled into her kitchen and found Alessandro making pancakes while Emma sat on the counter, directing him like a tiny chef. More chocolate chips, Emma commanded. And you have to flip it higher. Higher? Alessandro asked, amused. I'll burn your mother's ceiling. Mama won't mind, Emma said confidently. Right, Mama? Maria leaned against the doorframe, trying to reconcile this domestic scene with the armed man who'd faced down thugs 12 hours ago. Alessandro had rolled up his sleeves, and she could see tattoos on his forearms she hadn't noticed before, Italian phrases, and what looked like a family crest. What time is it? Maria asked groggily. 7:30, Alessandro said. I took the liberty of making breakfast. I hope that's okay. The scary man makes good pancakes, Emma announced. But I told him you're a better cook. I'm not scary, Alessandro protested mildly. You have a gun, Emma pointed out with devastating 6-year-old logic. Maria's eyes shot to Alessandro, who had the grace to look embarrassed. Emma. It's okay, Mama. Police have guns too. Is he police? Something like that, Alessandro said, which was the kindest lie Maria had ever heard. They ate breakfast in strange, comfortable silence. Alessandro had somehow found Emma's favorite syrup, the expensive kind Maria only bought on special occasions, and made the pancakes into Mickey Mouse shapes. Emma chattered about school, about her friend Sophia who had a new puppy, about the upcoming field trip to the zoo. Normal. Everything felt achingly normal. Until Maria's phone rang. The number was local, but unfamiliar. Maria answered cautiously. Hello. Maria? It's Kyle. Maria's blood turned to ice. Kyle, Emma's father, who'd walked out 3 years ago and hadn't sent a single child support payment. Kyle, who'd promised to visit Emma on her last birthday and never showed. What do you want? Maria asked coldly. Alessandro's head snapped up, his entire posture changing. Emma's smile faded. Is that Daddy? Emma asked, hope and hurt warring in her small voice. Maria pressed the phone tighter to her ear, walking into the living room. How did you get this number? I changed it specifically so you couldn't call. I've got friends, Kyle said, and she could hear the smug satisfaction in his voice. Interesting friends who've been showing me pictures. You at fancy restaurants with some rich guy. Wearing a nice dress. Living it up while my daughter. Your daughter? Maria's voice rose. You haven't seen Emma in 8 months. You've sent exactly $0 in support. You don't get to call her yours. That's about to change, Kyle said. See, I've been doing research on your new boyfriend.
Alessandro De Luca.
Mafia royalty. Which makes you an unfit mother, Maria. Dating criminals, exposing our daughter to danger. You have no idea what you're talking about. I've already talked to a lawyer, Kyle continued. I'm filing for custody. And with your new connections, I think any judge will agree that Emma's better off with me. Maria's vision blurred with rage and terror. You abandoned her. You don't get to waltz back in because you saw some pictures on social media. Those pictures are everywhere, Maria. You at Luxor. Him leaving your apartment this morning. Oh yeah, my friend's been watching. A known criminal spending the night at your place? With my 6-year-old daughter there? Nothing happened. Doesn't matter what happened. Matters what it looks like. Expect papers by the end of the week, Kyle paused. Unless you want to work something out. Maybe your rich boyfriend can help with that. I'm thinking $50,000 should cover my legal fees and lost time with Emma. You're blackmailing me. I'm being reasonable, Kyle said. 50 grand and I go away. No custody fight, no involvement. Just like before, but with proper compensation this time. The line went dead. Maria stood frozen, the phone slipping from her numb fingers. Alessandro caught it before it hit the floor. What did he say? Alessandro asked quietly. He wants money, Maria whispered. $50,000, or he's filing for custody. He has pictures of us. Of you leaving this morning. Who's been watching? I don't know. He said friends. Maria's legs gave out. She sat heavily on the couch. He's going to take Emma. He's going to use you against me and take my daughter. Alessandro's jaw clenched. No, he's not. You don't understand the system, Maria said desperately. I'm a waitress living paycheck to paycheck. He'll paint me as unstable, mixing with criminals. And he'll be right, won't he? Because you are a criminal, and I did let you into my life, and now Emma. Alessandro knelt in front of her, his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me. I have lawyers. The best lawyers money can buy. They handle custody cases, family law, everything. Let me help. With Mafia lawyers? Maria laughed bitterly. That'll look great in court. With legitimate lawyers from legitimate firms who happen to owe me favors, Alessandro corrected. Kyle has no case. He's an absentee father trying to extort money. Any decent lawyer will destroy him. But the pictures show you having dinner and a friend staying over. Nothing illegal. Nothing that proves you're an unfit mother. Alessandro's eyes were fierce. But we need to handle this carefully. No money. If we pay him, he'll just come back for more. Then what do? You let me make some calls, Alessandro said. And you trust me. From the kitchen, Emma called out. Mama? Why are you crying? Maria wiped her eyes quickly. I'm fine, baby. But she wasn't fine. Her past and present were colliding, and Emma was caught in the crossfire. She looked at Alessandro, this dangerous man who'd made her daughter pancakes, who'd promised protection he might not be able to deliver. No mafia involvement, Maria said firmly. No threats, no violence, nothing that could make this worse. If you help me, it has to be legal. Completely legal. Alessandro hesitated, and in that hesitation, Maria saw the conflict. She was asking him to fight with one hand tied behind his back. Please, she whispered. For Emma. Alessandro's expression hardened with resolve. Legal. I give you my word. But as he pulled out his phone to make calls, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just asked for the impossible. In Alessandro's world, nothing stayed legal for long. 3 days passed in tense limbo. Alessandro's lawyers had filed emergency motions blocking Kyle's custody claim, but the legal wheels turned slowly. Too slowly for Maria's fraying nerves. She went back to work because staying home meant drowning in anxiety. Alessandro had protested, but she'd been firm. She needed normalcy, needed to pretend her life hadn't been hijacked by forces beyond her control. Emma stayed with Mrs. Chin during the day, with 2 of Alessandro's men watching the building in rotating shifts. It should have made Maria feel safer. Instead, it made everything feel more real, more dangerous. The diner was slammed during the Friday evening rush. Maria moved on autopilot. Orders, coffee refills, 4 smiles. Keisha kept asking if she was okay, and Maria kept lying that she was fine. At 9 o'clock, her phone buzzed with a text from Alessandro. "How are you holding up?" Maria typed back. "Surviving. Shift ends at 10. My driver will pick you up. I can walk. It's 3 blocks. Maria."
Please.
She sighed and sent back a thumbs-up emoji. 3 blocks shouldn't require a driver, but arguing with Alessandro was exhausting. The last hour crawled by. Maria counted her tips, $63, enough to buy Emma new shoes, and helped Danny lock up. The parking lot behind the diner was dimly lit, just her car and a few others belonging to the kitchen staff. Alessandro's black sedan was idling near the exit. The scarred driver, she'd learned his name was Marco, visible behind the wheel. Maria waved to show she'd seen him and headed toward her own car. She needed to stop at Mrs. Chen's, pick up Emma, maybe grab takeout on the way home. Normal things. A normal night. She was fishing her keys from her purse when the first man appeared. He came from behind a dumpster, fast and silent. Maria barely had time to register his presence before he grabbed her arm, spinning her around. "Don't scream," he hissed. He had a gun pressed against her ribs. 2 more men materialized from the shadows, different from the ones who'd threatened her before, but cut from the same violent cloth.
Marco.
Maria shouted, but one of the men was already moving toward the sedan. Gunshots cracked through the night, sharp, deafening. Marco returned fire from the car, but he was pinned down, outnumbered. The man holding Maria dragged her toward a white van that had appeared at the lot's far end, engine running. Terror gave Maria strength she didn't know she had. She twisted, driving her elbow into the man's throat the way a self-defense instructor had taught years ago in a community center class she'd barely been able to afford. He gasped, his grip loosening. Maria ran. She made it 5 steps before another man tackled her, slamming her against the asphalt. Pain exploded through her shoulder and hip. Her keys scattered across the pavement. "Stupid bitch," the man snarled. "You're just making this harder." More gunshots.
Shouting.
Maria couldn't see what was happening. Her face was pressed against the ground, the man's knee digging into her spine. Then the weight lifted suddenly. Maria rolled over, gasping, and saw Alessandro. He'd appeared like an avenging angel, moving with lethal precision. The man who'd held her down was unconscious on the ground. Alessandro had a gun in one hand, his eyes scanning for threats with the cold calculation of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Marco was out of the sedan now, along with 2 other men Maria hadn't seen arrive. The gunfight was over as quickly as it had started, the attackers retreating to their van, tires squealing as they fled. Alessandro knelt beside Maria, his hands checking her for injuries with surprising gentleness. "Are you hurt?" His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "I don't know," Maria managed. "Everything hurt. How did you?" "I was already on my way. I had a bad feeling." Alessandro helped her sit up carefully. "Marco, call our contact at the precinct. Tell them we need this scene cleaned up quietly." "No," Maria said sharply. "No cleaning up. Call the real police. I want a report." "Maria, that's not how." "I don't care how you do things." Maria's voice cracked. "I want the police here. I want this documented. I want." She broke off, her whole body starting to shake as shock set in. "Why are they targeting me? Why won't they stop?" Alessandro pulled her against his chest, and she was too exhausted to resist. "Because Vincent Russo thinks you're my weakness. He's escalating, trying to force my hand." "Force your hand to do what?" "To give him what he wants. Territory. Control." Or Alessandro's jaw clenched. "To start a war he thinks he can win." Maria pulled back to look at him. "What does that mean?" "It means this isn't going to stop," Alessandro said bluntly. "Not with a legal response. Russo doesn't care about laws or consequences. He cares about power. And he's decided that hurting you is the way to hurt me." "Then tell him I'm nothing to you." Maria's voice rose hysterically. Tell him this was all a mistake, that we're not together, that I'm just some random woman you met once. He won't believe it, Alessandro interrupted.
Not now.
Not after I just brought half my crew to save you from a parking lot ambush. Not after the way he stopped himself. After the way you what? Alessandro looked at her with something raw and desperate in his eyes. After the way I've been ready to go to war for you, since the moment we met. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Probably Danny from inside the diner. Alessandro stood, pulling Maria with him. You need to listen to me very carefully, he said urgently. The police will ask questions. You tell them the truth, that you were attacked, that my security stopped it. Nothing more. Don't mention Russo, don't mention rivalries. Just a random attempted mugging that went wrong. You want me to lie. I want you alive, Alessandro said fiercely. And if Russo thinks the police are investigating him, he'll escalate further. Maria, please. Trust me on this. Police cars were pulling into the lot, lights flashing. Maria looked at Alessandro, this man who'd somehow become central to her life in less than a week. This man who was asking her to lie to police, to cover up an attempted kidnapping, to trust him when every instinct screamed that getting deeper into his world would destroy her. Where's Emma? Maria asked suddenly, panic flooding fresh. Safe, Alessandro assured her. Marco's partner is with Mrs. Chen. I had them locked down the moment the attack started. Emma doesn't even know anything happened. Maria closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. When she opened them, police officers were approaching, and she had to make a choice. Trust the system that had never protected her before. Or trust the criminal who'd just saved her life. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it your way. But Alessandro, this has to end. Whatever it takes, this has to end. It will, Alessandro promised, and the cold determination in his voice reminded her that she wasn't dealing with a gentle man who'd made Emma pancakes. She was dealing with a mafia boss who'd just been given permission to solve problems the only way he knew how. With violence. Maria had agreed to the safe house in the hospital parking lot at 2 a.m, her body aching from bruises and her mind too exhausted to fight anymore. Emma had been brought there, wide awake and terrified despite Marco's partner's attempts to comfort her. The moment Emma saw Maria's torn clothes and scraped face, she'd burst into tears. I want to go home, Emma had sobbed against Maria's chest. Please, Mama, I just want to go home. But home wasn't safe. That's what Alessandro kept saying, and Maria was too tired to argue. The safe house was a cabin 2 hours north, tucked into woods so dense that Maria lost cell signal 5 miles before they arrived. It was nice, actually nicer than anywhere Maria had ever stayed. Exposed beams, a stone fireplace, a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. How long? Maria had asked as Alessandro carried their hastily packed bags inside. A few days. A week at most. That had been 5 days ago. 5 days of watching Emma color at the kitchen table while armed men patrolled outside. 5 days of Alessandro on his phone constantly, his conversations in rapid Italian that Maria couldn't understand but recognized as progressively more heated. 5 days of feeling like a prisoner in a gilded cage. I need to go back, Maria said on the 6th morning, finding Alessandro on the porch with his coffee and his phone. Emma's missing school. I'm missing work. Danny's going to fire me. He won't, Alessandro said without looking up from his messages. I spoke to him. You have paid leave for as long as you need. Maria's hands clenched. You can't just arrange my life without asking me. I'm keeping you alive. I'm not living. Maria's voice rose.
I'm hiding.
There's a difference. Alessandro finally looked at her, and she could see the exhaustion in his face. He hadn't slept well either. She heard him pacing at night, making calls at odd hours, the weight of whatever war he was fighting pressing down on him. For more days, he said quietly. I'm close to resolving this.
How?
How are you resolving it? Alessandro's jaw tightened. You don't want to know. Yes, I do. If I'm hiding in the woods with my daughter while you resolve things, I deserve to know how. For a long moment, Alessandro said nothing. Then, Vincent Russo has operations, legitimate fronts that fund his illegal activities. I'm dismantling them. Systematically. When he has no money, no infrastructure, he'll have no choice but to negotiate. It sounded reasonable. Almost legal. But something in Alessandro's tone made Maria's skin prickle. What aren't you telling me? Maria.
What aren't you telling
Me. Alessandro stood, moving to the porch railing. His back was to her, his shoulders rigid. Some of his operations can't be dismantled legally. They require more. Direct action. Direct action, Maria repeated slowly. You mean violence. I mean doing what's necessary to end this. Are people going to die? When Alessandro didn't answer immediately, Maria felt something crack inside her. Oh my God. People are going to die because of me. People are going to die because Vincent Russo declared war, Alessandro corrected, turning to face her. You're not responsible for his choices. But I'm the excuse. Maria's voice shook. You said it yourself. He's using me to get to you. If I wasn't in your life, none of this would be happening. If you weren't in my life, I'd still be the man my father raised, Alessandro said with sudden intensity. Cold. Brutal. Alone. You gave me a reason to be better, Maria. Don't ask me to regret that. I can't do this, Maria whispered. I can't be responsible for people dying. I can't teach my daughter that violence solves problems. I can't. The cabin door opened. Marco stood there, his expression grim. Boss. We need to talk.
now?
Alessandro's entire demeanor changed. What happened? Russo made a move. Hit one of our storage facilities. 3 of our guys are in the hospital. And he left a message. Marco's eyes flicked to Maria. Maybe we should talk inside. Say it, Alessandro demanded. He said next time it'll be the waitress and her kid. Said he knows about this safe house. Said nowhere is safe. The blood drained from Maria's face. Alessandro's expression turned to stone.
How?
Alessandro's voice was deadly quiet. How does he know about this location? Marco looked sick. We think there's someone on the inside. Someone in your crew feeding him information. The implications hit like a physical blow. If someone in Alessandro's organization was betraying him, then everything, the protection, the safe house, the promises of safety, was built on sand. Emma appeared in the doorway behind Marco, her small face worried.
Mama?
Why is everyone yelling? Maria's protective instincts overwhelmed everything else. She crossed to her daughter, scooping her up. We're not yelling, baby. We're just talking. But Emma wasn't fooled. I want to go home. I don't like it here anymore. I know, sweetheart.
Soon.
Alessandro was giving Marco rapid instructions in Italian. She caught words like sweep, interrogate, and lockdown. Then he turned to Maria, his face conflicted. I need to go back to the city. Find the leak. Deal with Russo directly. Then we're coming with you, Maria said immediately. Absolutely not. You're safer here. You just said someone betrayed you. How is anywhere safe? Maria's voice was rising again, and she tried to modulate it for Emma's sake. If there's a traitor in your organization, then this safe house is compromised. At least in the city, I can run. I can hide. I can protect my daughter myself. Maria. No, she interrupted. I'm done letting you make all the decisions. Either we come with you, or I take Emma, and we disappear on our own. Those are your options. Alessandro looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Maria's expression stopped him. She'd been backed into too many corners, forced into too many decisions she didn't want. This time, she was choosing. Fine, Alessandro said finally. But you stay at my penthouse. Maximum security. And you don't leave without a full detail. Agreed. As they packed to leave, Maria overheard Marco talking quietly to another guard outside. Boss is planning something, Marco said. Tonight, I think. He's got that look. What look? The one he had when his father died, and he took out the 5 families who tried to move on our territory. A pause. Someone's going to die tonight. Maria's hands stilled on Emma's suitcase. She'd asked Alessandro to end this. but she'd also made him promise no violence on her account. Now she was terrified to learn which promise he'd keep. Alessandro's penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel on the 42nd floor, with views of the city that made Emma press her nose against the windows in wonder. But Maria couldn't appreciate the luxury. She was too busy watching Alessandro transform into someone she barely recognized. He'd been on the phone since they arrived 3 hours ago, his voice cold and clipped. Men came and went, soldiers, Maria realized with growing unease. They spoke in coded language, but she understood enough. They were preparing for something violent. Emma had finally fallen asleep in one of the spare bedrooms, exhausted from the day's upheaval. Maria stood in the doorway watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, trying to memorize this moment of peace before everything shattered. Maria. She turned to find Alessandro in the hallway, his tie loosened, his face drawn. "We found him," Alessandro said quietly. "The traitor." Maria's stomach dropped.
Who?
Dante Moretti, my second in command. The man I trusted with everything. Alessandro's voice was hollow. He's been feeding information to Russo for 2 months. Every move we made, every safe house location, everything.
Why? Money. Power.
He thought I was weak for trying to go legitimate. Thought I'd destroy the family with my reforms. Alessandro laughed bitterly. He was planning to have me killed and take over himself. Working with Russo was just the first step. Maria moved closer, seeing the betrayal carved into every line of his face. "What are you going to do?" "What I have to do."
Alessandro.
"He set you up, Maria." Alessandro's eyes were dark with fury. "The attack in the parking lot?"
That was Dante.
"He told Russo where you'd be when you'd be vulnerable. He tried to have you kidnapped or killed to force my hand." The room tilted. Maria had to grip the doorframe for support. "He's in your organization. Can't you just exile him? Make him leave the city? He's already responsible for 3 of my men in the hospital. He's betrayed every oath he ever took. He's put you and Emma in danger." Alessandro's voice hardened. "In my world, there's only one punishment for that. You're going to kill him," Maria said flatly. "I'm going to do what any boss would do to a traitor." "No," the word came out sharp, definitive. "I won't let you become a murderer because of me." "I've always been a murderer, Maria," Alessandro said with brutal honesty. "I've just tried to hide it from you. Then keep hiding it." Maria's voice cracked. "You said you wanted to be better. You said I made you want to change. But the first time things get hard, you're ready to kill someone? This isn't about being better. This is about survival. It's about revenge," Maria corrected. "And I won't have blood on my hands. I won't have Emma growing up knowing that people died because of us." Alessandro moved closer, his voice dropping. "Then what do you want me to do? Let him go? Let Russo keep coming after you? Keep putting Emma at risk? I want you to think." Maria was crying now, tears of frustration and fear. "There has to be another way. Legal consequences, turning him over to the police, something that doesn't end in." "The police can't touch him," Alessandro interrupted. "He's too careful. And if I turn him over, Russo will just bail him out and send him back at us." "Maria, you're asking me to show mercy to a man who showed you none." "I'm asking you to be the man I thought you were," Maria said desperately. "The man who made my daughter pancakes. The man who promised to protect us without becoming a monster." Alessandro flinched like she'd slapped him. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. "He's being held at a warehouse on the docks," Alessandro said finally. "My men have him secured. I was planning to handle it tonight, quickly and quietly." But he looked at Maria with something like pain. "You want me to choose mercy over justice, peace over security. You want me to be better than what I am." "Yes," Maria whispered.
Ido.
"Then come with me." Maria blinked. "What?" "Come to the warehouse. See what we're dealing with. Meet the man who tried to have you killed." Alessandro's expression was unreadable. "And then tell me what mercy looks like in this situation." "You want me to confront him?" I want you to understand that the world you're asking me to live in isn't compatible with the world I actually inhabit, Alessandro said. You want me to change?
Fine.
Show me how. But don't do it from behind walls where everything is theoretical. Come see what I'm trying to protect you from. It was a challenge and a plea wrapped together. Maria thought of Emma sleeping peacefully in the next room, of the life she wanted for her daughter. One without violence, without fear, without compromise. If I come, Maria said slowly, will you promise me something? Anything. No matter what I see, no matter what he says, you won't kill him tonight. You'll wait. You'll think about other options. Alessandro's jaw worked. She could see the war raging behind his eyes. Years of training and instinct battling against something new and fragile he was trying to build. I promise, he said finally. No death tonight. But Maria, after you see him, after you understand what he's done, you might change your mind. I won't, Maria said with more confidence than she felt. But as Alessandro made arrangements for extra security to watch Emma, as Marco brought the car around and Maria prepared to enter a world she'd spent her whole life avoiding, she wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Or if somehow, impossibly, she was about to save Alessandro's soul and her own in the process. The warehouse waited in the darkness, and with it, the man who'd torn their fragile peace apart. Maria was about to learn what mercy really cost. The warehouse smelled of rust and salt water, the kind of place where terrible things happened and no one ever found out. Maria's footsteps echoed on the concrete floor as Alessandro led her inside, Marco flanking them with a gun clearly visible at his hip. 12 men stood in a loose semicircle around a chair in the center of the space. In that chair, bound and bloodied, sat Dante Moretti. He looked up when they entered, and Maria saw the moment he recognized her. His swollen eyes widened, then narrowed with contempt. So the waitress gets a front row seat. Dante spat, blood on his teeth. How touching. Shut up, one of Alessandro's men said, but Alessandro raised a hand. Let him talk, Alessandro said coldly. I want Maria to hear exactly what kind of man she's asking me to spare. Dante laughed, the sound wet and ugly. You're already whipped, boss. Bringing her here like she has any say in family business. Your father would be ashamed. My father is dead, Alessandro said. And his way of doing things died with him. Because of her, Dante's eyes fixed on Maria with pure hatred. You've made him weak.
Soft.
The De Luca family was feared before you showed up with your sad sob story and your brat kid. Now look at him, playing house, going legitimate, letting rivals think they can attack us without consequences. Maria felt the words like physical blows, but she forced herself to step closer. You tried to have me killed. I tried to remind him what he is, Dante corrected. A boss. A leader. Not some lovesick fool playing pretend with a woman who doesn't belong in this world. So you betrayed him? Maria's voice was steady despite her racing heart. You sold out your own family to Vincent Russo. I saved this family, Dante snarled. Russo and I had a deal. He'd eliminate Alessandro, I'd take over, and together we'd run this city the way it's supposed to be run. With strength. With fear. Not with this pathetic attempt at going legitimate. Alessandro's hand moved to his gun. Maria saw it and stepped between them without thinking. Don't, she said quietly. Maria, move, Alessandro said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. No, Maria turned to face Dante again. I need to ask him something. She moved closer to the chair, close enough that she could see the broken capillaries in his eyes, smell the sweat and blood on him. Dante, when Alessandro's sister was 16, she was caught in a street fight on Harbor Street.
Did you know about that?
Dante's expression flickered with confusion. What does that have to? Did you know? Maria pressed. Yeah, I knew. Lucia talks about it all the time. Some woman saved her. So what? I was that woman, Maria said softly. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know her family ran half the city. I just saw a scared girl who needed help, and I helped her. That's all. Dante stared at her, processing. You're the one. Yes, Maria's voice was shaking now. And 8 years later, I met Alessandro by accident. By chance. Or fate, or whatever you want to call it. And you decided that made me a threat. That loving your boss made me dangerous. Love. Dante laughed bitterly. This isn't love. This is weakness masquerading as... It's everything, Maria interrupted, and she realized as she said it that it was true. It's every reason Alessandro is trying to change. Every reason I'm standing in this warehouse right now instead of running as far from this world as possible. She turned to face the room. These hard men with guns and blood on their consciences, men who'd seen decades of violence and learned to call it business. I know what you think of me, Maria said, her voice carrying in the cavernous space.
I'm nobody.
A waitress. Overweight. Single mom. Not glamorous. Not connected. Not worthy of your boss's attention. And you're right. I'm all those things. But I'm also the woman who protected Lucia De Luca when I didn't have to. Who chose compassion over safety 8 years ago. Her eyes found Alessandro's. And I'm the woman asking all of you right now to choose that same compassion. Not because Dante deserves it. He doesn't. Not because mercy is easy. It isn't. But because there's a 6-year-old girl sleeping in a penthouse right now, and someday she's going to ask me what kind of world she lives in. Maria's voice broke. And I need to be able to tell her it's a world where people can change. Where violence isn't the only answer. Where even the worst betrayals don't have to end in blood. The warehouse was silent except for the distant sound of water lapping against the docks. You want me dead, Dante said to Alessandro, his voice strangely subdued. Everyone in this room knows that's what I deserve. Yes, Alessandro said simply. But she's asking you to be better than that. Yes. Dante looked at Maria with something that might have been respect or might have been disgust. What do you want, lady? You want me to say sorry? You want me to cry and beg? No, Maria said. I want you exiled. I want you stripped of everything, power, money, protection. I want you to leave this city with nothing but your life, and I want that mercy to haunt you every single day. I want you to remember that you're alive because someone you tried to kill chose compassion over revenge. She turned to Alessandro. And I want it to matter. I want this to be the moment everything changes. Not just for him, for all of this. Alessandro stared at her, and Maria saw the war in his eyes. Years of conditioning, of survival, of being taught that mercy was weakness, all of it fighting against the man he was trying to become. One of the soldiers, an older man with gray hair and scars on his hands, spoke up. Boss, your father would have. My father is dead, Alessandro interrupted, his eyes never leaving Maria's. And maybe it's time we stop living by dead men's rules. He looked around the room at his men. Dante Moretti betrayed us. Betrayed me? Put an innocent woman and her child at risk. In the old days, there would be no question what happens next. The tension was unbearable. Maria held her breath. But these aren't the old days, Alessandro said finally. He turned to Marco. Strip him of everything. Bank accounts, properties, connections, all of it goes to compensate the families of the men he put in the hospital. Put him on a bus to anywhere but here. If he ever comes back to this city, if he ever contacts anyone in this organization, if he ever so much as whispers the name De Luca, then there are no second chances. Dante's face went white. You're serious? Completely, Alessandro's voice was cold steel. You wanted to see me weak? This is what strength looks like now. Having the power to kill you, and choosing not to. Get him out of my sight. Marco and 2 others cut Dante's bonds and hauled him to his feet. As they dragged him toward the exit, Dante looked back at Maria one final time. You just made him softer, Dante said. Russo will come at you harder now. Then we'll handle it, Maria said.
Together.
Without becoming what we're fighting against. When Dante was gone, the remaining men stood in uncomfortable silence. Finally, the older soldier spoke again. Boss, with respect, your father would have killed him without hesitation, Alessandro finished. I know. But my father also died alone, feared by everyone, loved by no one. And I don't want that life anymore. He looked at Maria, and his expression was raw. She saved my sister 8 years ago. Tonight, she saved me. Maria crossed to him, and Alessandro pulled her into his arms. She could feel him shaking. Did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? Alessandro whispered against her hair. No, Maria said. You just made the bravest choice of your life. But as they left the warehouse, Maria couldn't shake Dante's final words. Russo would see this as weakness. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. 4 days after the warehouse, Vincent Russo requested a meeting. Alessandro had been cautious. Meetings with rival bosses often ended in bloodshed. But Russo had sent the request through official channels, through lawyers and intermediaries, with promises of neutrality. He wanted to talk. It's a trap, Marco had insisted. But Alessandro had agreed anyway, with one condition. The meeting would happen at a public location. The city pier at sunset, where dozens of people would be walking, jogging, living their normal lives. Witnesses everywhere. Safety in visibility. Maria had insisted on coming. Absolutely not, Alessandro had said immediately. This is about me, Maria countered. I deserve to be there when it ends. They'd argued for an hour before Alessandro finally, reluctantly agreed. But Emma would stay at the penthouse with Mrs. Chun and 4 armed guards.
Non negotiable.
Now Maria stood on the pier with Alessandro, Marco, and 2 other guards positioned nearby, but not hovering. The sun was setting over the water, painting everything gold and orange. Families walked past with ice cream. Teenagers took selfies. Life, normal and beautiful. Vincent Russo arrived with his own guards, 2 men who looked like they'd been carved from concrete. Russo himself was older than Maria expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and a face that had seen too many wars. He studied Maria for a long moment before speaking. So you're the woman who's been causing all this trouble, Russo said. Not hostile, just observational. I'm the woman your men tried to kidnap, Maria replied evenly. The woman you threatened. The woman whose daughter you used as leverage. Fair point, Russo almost smiled. You've got spine. I respect that. I don't care about your respect, Maria said. I care about you leaving my family alone. Russo turned to Alessandro. You exiled Dante Moretti instead of killing him. Word on the street is your men think you're going soft. My men think what I tell them to think, Alessandro said calmly. And what happened with Dante was a message. The De Luca family operates differently now. Differently how? Legitimately. No more protection rackets. No more gambling operations. No more loan sharking, Alessandro's voice was firm. I'm transitioning everything to legal businesses. Real estate, restaurants, import-export. Clean money, clean operations.
Huslogid.
You're serious. You're actually serious. Completely. Because of her? Russo gestured to Maria. Because of me, Alessandro corrected. She just reminded me that there are more important things than power and fear, like actually living instead of just surviving. Russo was quiet for a moment, watching the sunset. Your father and I were enemies for 30 years, but we understood each other. We played by the same rules. And those rules got him killed at 62, Alessandro said quietly. Heart attack from stress. Died in his office, surrounded by money and enemies. No family at his bedside. No one who loved him. Just feared him. You think going legitimate will change that? I think it's worth trying. Russo studied them both, this unlikely pair, the Mafia heir and the Waitress. I came here to negotiate territory, to carve up the city, between us, like men do. I'm not interested in territory, Alessandro said.
Keep yours.
I'm pulling back from those operations anyway. No conflict, no war. Just 2 organizations that happen to exist in the same city without trying to destroy each other. That simple? That's simple. Russo laughed again, but this time it sounded almost genuine. You know what the funny thing is? I've been in this life for 40 years. Lost my wife to it, never see my grandkids because they're afraid of me. And here you are, walking away from power most men would kill for. He looked at Maria.
What did you say to him?
In that warehouse, my sources say you made a speech that had grown men lowering their weapons. I told him the truth, Maria said softly. That violence doesn't end cycles. It just perpetuates them. That real strength is choosing peace when war would be easier. Naive, Russo said, but without heat. Maybe, Maria agreed. But I'd rather be naive and sleep at night than powerful and haunted. Russo was silent for a long moment. Then he extended his hand to Alessandro. No war.
No conflicts.
Your territories are your own. But DeLuca, if you ever change your mind about going soft, the offer stands. Could use a man with your tactical mind. I won't change my mind, Alessandro said, shaking his hand. But thank you. Russo nodded once and walked away with his guards, disappearing into the crowd of normal people living normal lives. Maria released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Is it really over? With Russo? Yes, Alessandro pulled her close. With everyone else who thinks I'm weak? That'll take time. But we'll handle it. We, Maria repeated, testing the word. We, Alessandro confirmed. If you'll have me. All of me, the parts that are trying to be better and the parts that are still learning how. Maria looked up at him. This dangerous man who'd made her daughter pancakes, who'd chosen mercy over revenge, who'd walked away from power because she'd asked him to. Emma likes you, Maria said. She asked me this morning if you were going to be her new daddy. Alessandro's breath caught. What did you tell her? I told her that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, not the ones we're born into. Alessandro kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious. Around them, life continued, joggers, families, teenagers. Normal people doing normal things. I have an idea, Alessandro said when they pulled apart. How would you feel about managing a restaurant? What restaurant? One I'm opening. Legitimate business. Your name on the contract. You choose the menu, hire the staff, run it however you want. Good pay, benefits, normal hours so you can be with Emma. Maria stared at him. You're offering me a restaurant? I'm offering you a future, Alessandro corrected. One where you're not just surviving. Where Emma grows up safe and you finally get to breathe. Tears pricked Maria's eyes. What did I do to deserve this? You saved my sister, Alessandro said simply. And then you saved me. I'm just returning the favor. They walked along the pier as the sun finished setting, and Maria felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate, fragile kind that shattered at the first setback, but solid, real hope for tomorrow. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chun. Emma wants to know when you're coming home. She made you both drawings. Maria showed Alessandro the message. He smiled, that soft smile she was beginning to love. Let's go home, he said. And for the first time since Maria had pulled a scared girl into a doorway 8 years ago, setting this entire impossible chain of events in motion, she believed that home was exactly where she was heading. Not just a place, but a person. Not just survival, but life. Not just an ending, but a beginning. The end.